Hi everyone, I'm Cassandra Donnelly from Creative Passages, and today I want to share with you how to make a grief journal. There's a lot involved with making any type of journal, let alone a grief journal. So there's going to be many steps. This video is going to concentrate just on making the front cover and the back cover and the things that you would need. What you're going to learn today really could be applied to making any type of journal, junk journal, art journal, grief journal. It's the same concept. Today we're just going to make the front cover and the back cover, and we're going to make a ring bound journal. So I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do that, and I'm going to actually walk you through that. I've already made a grief journal for myself, which I'll link to my grief journal. I made it so that I could work through my own grief, but also so that I could inspire you, listeners, to make your own. I also led a workshop at my church where we made grief journals. So we're all done with that, but I decided I wanted to make a series on how to do the grief journals for those who couldn't make it and for those who are still dealing with grief. Because everywhere in the world we've got people that are struggling with grief, because we live in really difficult times and we go through a lot of things that can bring loss to us. Not just the loss of a loved one, but we can lose a job, we can lose our own health, we can have past trauma that we need to work through. In fact, the grief journal that I'm going to make today, or start on today, is going to be a trauma journal. Since I already have a grief journal, I wanted to make one that will specifically address my trauma. And I actually want to put a lot of old artwork in it, so I can kind of tell the story of my recovery from trauma. So there's lots of ways to go about making a ring bound journal. Now, first of all, let me just say I recommend a ring bound journal when you're new to the making any type of journals, because number one, it's a lot easier than making a journal with signatures. Okay, a lot easier, and also it gives you a lot of freedom so that you can work outside the journal and then bring your page into the journal and just put it in there. So you can take the pages out, you can rearrange the pages, or you can take art that you did outside your journal and then turn it into a page that you put into your journal. So that's why I really like the idea of a ring bound journal, and it was easier for me to be more successful with this, with the ring bound journal. So you're going to need something sturdy to create the cover. Now we have a chipboard that you could use. Okay, if you want to go shopping, I got this at Amazon. It's 8.5 by 11, and I'll put all the links at the bottom. So chipboard is really good to use. I used 2 chipboards for my cover and my back, but what I did is I trimmed these in half. So when you cut this 8.5 by 11 in half, of course you have 8.5 by 5.5, and that's the size of my journal that I made, which I thought was a really good size. Now you could decide to make this whole thing your journal, or you can make it any size you want. And then of course, once you've got your cover and your back cover, then you can decide to make your pages, very similar in size, or you could go junk journal style and you can have pages that are all different kinds of sizes, but it's easy to fit into the ring bound journal, which is another reason why I love it. Also, you're going to need your rings. So these rings I got on Amazon. There's all kinds of rings that you can get. Now honestly, based on my experience, you're going to want to go bigger. So this, I've tried both, the 3-inch, and the largest size I could find was 3.5. I found those on Amazon. I'll put the link. The first one was KTO Joy. That was a 3-inch. It came in a 12-pack, loose leaf binder rings. And then also the 3.5 I found from Rylex, a wild loose binder rings. Both on Amazon. Came in a package kind of like this. So I'll put the link below. So again, show you these rings. I started off getting a bunch of different sizes for other people, but the reason you might want to go with the larger rings is that you can hold more pages in there, and especially if you're going to make mixed media art like what I do, you'll be able to fit more pages. Now honestly, even with the 3.5 rings, I still struggled when I got it filled up at the end to get to the back of it and take things in and out, just because it was so full, and the pages would want to pop, other pages want to pop out. So the larger size you go, the less you're going to struggle with that. Now it is a little bit gaudy and bulky at first when you're working with such a small size, but again, doesn't really matter. Let me show you. This is my grief journal. I attached some other pages in here that I want to go back and put in. So I made the box. Okay, there's a whole nother video showing you that. You can see how thick it is. All right, now let's put this right here. This is my cover. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make a similar cover. That's my back, and boy, it seems like even thicker than I remember it. So it's pretty thick. Okay, so this this is why you want the 3.5 rings. Well, that's what I have on here. Okay, it just grew and grew and grew. So, but I don't even have, I have a little bit of my I have a little bit of my trauma in there, but I could go with a whole new trauma journal. Okay, so you need your chipboard, or an alternative to chipboard could be this is the back of a watercolor pad, so that's like a chipboard itself you could use. Or another idea is to use an old book. Okay, this was a book this was a book my daughter had in childhood. It's no longer viable as a book. The pages are completely missing, but guess what, we do have a nice hard cover, front and back. I could transform this into a journal and make a great journal. Okay, another idea is to use Amazon packaging. Okay, so you could actually use the box from Amazon and cut it down to make a journal, or you could use this, and it'll be a little bit thinner than the chipboard, but it's got a pad in here, so it might actually make a nice cover for you. And also you could use cereal boxes. I thought I had some aside here, but I don't know what I did with them. So you could use a cereal box and use that as your chipboard or your cardboard, and you know, cut that down to the size whatever you want. And you could, if it's too thin, you could glue 2 pieces of cereal boxes together. So that is what I'm going to be showing you today. So you need to get your materials together, whatever you're going to use for your cover, and then you have to be thinking about, okay, so how do I want to decorate this? My last journal that I just showed you, I used both material fabrics, and I also used collage. So I've got collage materials right here. I'm thinking this new one I'll make the same way. And then I went to the thrift store and I bought some pretty materials like this. I love this. So I don't necessarily know what I'm going to use yet. Let me show you some of these. Well, if you maybe want to get some lace or something pretty and decorative to put on there. I've got some more here that I might use, and some more materials from the thrift store. Look how pretty that is. Love that. I wanted something fuzzy and pink, peachy pink, because peach is like the color of comfort for me. And actually I got this sweater at the same time I got this, looking for something fuzzy, but then I liked I liked it, so I decided to wear it. Today's the first day I wore it. And then sometimes you can find pretty curtains like this. Look at that lace. I mean, that's gorgeous in my opinion. That would be nice for your journal. And then we've got one more here that I bought. Another like curtain panel. Okay, pretty sheer fabric that you could use. And another thing you might consider is odds and ends jewelry that you could use as embellishments. This stuff was all given to me, but you can find stuff like this at the thrift store. Also, you know, old buttons and things like that. And then you can buy decorative little buttons. These are kind of flat, so it's really nice to use in your journal because it's not going to take up a lot of space and be super bulky. That's something you do have to be concerned about, especially if you've got the smaller rings, that the bulkier your art is, your journal pages, the less you can fit in your journal. I don't mind that mine was so big. I really don't. I love it. But keep that in mind. Again, that's probably not going to, well, I could close it. I don't have it closed. I mean, it'll sit in the bookshelf, you know, if I close it. I will be going over the enclosures too. I put my journal back in there, but I had the Sari silk as an enclosure. So you could really have anything that you're going to enclose it with. But see, I also have a button in here, and I sewed this button on. So you're also going to need to think about an enclosure. So this can, I can wrap this up like this. And then I can go like that. You can't see, can you? I wrapped it around, and now I can go like this. And I can close it that way. So I've reined in this a little bit. Okay. So you're also going to need something to close it up with, a ribbon, Sari silk. I got that on Amazon. Also, you can add little dangles to it. I'm not going to go over the dangle making today. That'll be a different session. But to sew your button into cardboard, you're going to need something sturdier, like a leather sewing kit. That'll work well. That's what I got, because you have the thicker needles in the leather sewing kit that could go through the cardboard. Regular needle is not going to go through the cardboard to sew your button on. I recommend probably sewing a button on like this is going to be better than trying to just glue your button on. So this was, I don't even know where I got this, but just be collecting, you know, pretty items. Stuck here. Those are the ingredients you're going to need. And one other really important material you're going to need is Fabri-Tac, or some type of material glue. I recommend Fabri-Tac more so than the other types of material glues, because it's just going to work better than your other types of glues. The other ones I bought just didn't really hold up that well, but this works excellent. Now it's a little bit on the pricey side, but it's totally worth it. So I do recommend you use the Fabri-Tac. Alright, the other thing you might need is optional, but you might, well, that's something right here. This is a grommet plier, so you might need this. I bought this from Amazon in a grommet kit. So you get the plier, and then you get the little grommets. Now, this is not necessary, but it really adds that touch to your journal, which makes it look professional looking. So you can kind of see right there. It just adds that extra oomph. Okay, so that's why I recommend it, but it's not necessary. Now, when you're building your page, like your cover, you do have to keep in mind that you have to be able to punch through the cardboard and the material together. So I recommend that you do it like in stages, like maybe get one side done, punch it, and then maybe then glue the fabric or the materials on the other side, punch it again, because if you get it too thick, then the hole puncher, which is another thing you need, and I recommend heavy duty hole puncher, which this is a little one that I got here, a heavy duty hole puncher. But even the heavy duty one, if you get your cover or your back cover too thick, it's not going to work. If that happens, then you're going to need something like this, and I forget what this thing is called, but this will work basically to punch a hole in something super thick like that. The only thing is it's going to punch the hole probably a little bit smaller than your grommet pliers going to be able to fit into, so you might have to punch 2 holes kind of next to each other to get that to fit. So those are the materials that you're going to need for this. And I suppose if you were really on a tight budget, maybe you could just poke a hole, you know, with something sharp, but it's not going to be as nice as buying a hole puncher. They're really not that expensive. So I do recommend this. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. Okay, so we're going to talk about more how to do this in the next part of this.
Alright, so now you just got to cut your baseboard into the desired size. So I'm cutting mine in 5.5 by 8.5. If you're using a different type of base, like a different cardboard or cereal box, just cut it the same way. Or even if you're using the Amazon packaging, you just cut it.
Alright, so I recommend, if you've gathered your supplies, you're going to do just one set at a time. And you're going to set this other one aside. And I recommend you go ahead and you have something like this where you've already measured it and you punched your holes. There's no exact, you know, you don't have to have your holes in any particular place. You probably want it just each one, you know, maybe if you put this in half, have this punch be in the middle section of this half and this punch be in the middle section of that half, but you could err on going a little bit closer that way. But what's really important though is that from now on this is going to be your master like hole punch, and you're going to use this to make sure that all your pages have punches in the same spot. That's kind of important. So we're going to lay this down here. And notice I'm going to go ahead and mark this and punch it before I start gluing anything. This is just going to save us a little bit of trouble. And I'm doing this from experience. Okay. So, oops, I probably should go ahead and do these as well. Okay. Now we're going to have to punch it again, but this is going to make it easier to punch it because we already have some punches in there. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and punch these. And so what I did with my hole puncher is I took the back off so I can actually line it up and see what I'm doing. With the back on there, I can't see to line it up. So with it off, who knows where the back is now, but I don't ever use it. I line it up so I can see it. So this is the front, this is the back. Just line it up like that. Put a punch in there. Line it up like that. Put a punch in there. Okay, and do all of these.
Alright, so I'm finishing with my hole punches. And now I want to start to put it together and decorate it. I have everything at 300% here. So I'm just trying to choose my materials. I want ribbons, and I want this pretty red material right here, and I want that pretty pink furry material, and I want that material, and I want the beige, and I want the ribbon, and I want this green corduroy material, and I want this material that my mom gave me. question is, how do I put this all together? How does it fit together? I think that maybe the material my mom gave me might help me coordinate the colors just a little bit. So I'm going to start off by cutting this material. It's kind of together. It might be like a scarf. I think this is so pretty. So at this point in the game, I have no idea what I want to do. But I also know I want to include this painted paper, which also has a little bit of collage on it and a little bit of sgraffito on it. I do want to incorporate that because I think it kind of conveys what trauma might look like to me. But I wanted to go with the peachy materials and all the other materials. So I also want to include these papers that I got on Etsy. They're printables, and there's lots of different colors that I like, the peachies and the beige and the yellowish and the coral colors. I want to include all of that, and I think I'm getting a little carried away, but it's better to just figure out what you want, and you can always like downsize it later. So I did go overboard a little bit, but not all of that is going to go into my project. The hardest part really is just making all those decisions. So the materials really had me overwhelmed. So I think I decided what I'm going to do is start with the paper because I'm more familiar with working with papers. And I really have no clue what the best way is to glue this down, but I decided that I'm going to cut the four corners and do it that way. And I probably should have glued it first. So I'm using Fabric Fuse only because I ran out of fabric tack. Well, there's a teeny bit left in there, but probably not enough. But I'm going to use a Mod Podge for this paper making part, so I'm going to pour a little bit in there. It's already been diluted. I find it easier to work if it's been diluted with water a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to rub it on my surface. Lay the paper down and then make sure it's in the right spot. And I almost forgot to include the other tag board. Notice I'm going to use a heavier glue instead of the Mod Podge for this. This is just better. I'm going to glue it down. And just going to glue these edges down and tear off the excess. And then I'm going to glue the other edge. And so there's a little bit of wrinkles there, but I'm not bothered because most of it's going to come up. I mean, most of it's going to be covered. So I really do like the way the paper looks, but the paper by itself is just too flat for me. And I really just like the softness of the materials. I find that very comforting. Okay, so I'm trying to smooth out the wrinkles a little bit. It tore. Doesn't matter because it's going to be covered up. So now what I want to do is find where my holes are. So that's why I was feeling it. Found where my previous holes were, and then I'm going to punch it again. It's better if you don't cover up your previous holes, but if you can't figure out how to do it easily without covering up, then go for it. You can always feel it, but you want to kind of put the hole punches as you go along so it doesn't get too thick or too hard to punch, because if your cover gets really thick, you're not going to fit the hole punch in. So that's why I like to do that in stages. Now I really want this furry material here. I just don't know how much I want or what to do with it. I mean, looks really gaudy just like that. So I decided I need to cut it up into smaller pieces, and I really want this red. So right now I'm just cutting out pieces of what I know that I want to include. I just don't know how I want to include it yet. So I'm just gonna cut more pieces and figure it out as I go along. Like I said, I'm not used to working with materials a whole lot. Do want some of the sheer fabric as well. Consider if I want some of the dangly lacy stuff, but I decide that I don't. And I decided that these pieces need to get a little bit smaller. They're too big. And I like this material. I think my mother gave me that too. And I really like the frayed edges of the material. And I like these beigey colors as well. It's all kind of very earthy. But the peach and the red and the yellows are kind of some of my favorite colors. And also I love pine green too, to be honest. So I really like that lace. I consider whether or not I want to use it. And I'm thinking maybe towards the end. So I set it aside. But right now I want some of the sheer stuff. And then I also want those stripes. And on the other side are flowers. So both sides are really nice. And it kind of matches the yellow stripes as well. So I'm just going to cut it down. And then I'm going to try to figure this out. I got a lot of pieces there. And I also want that paper. But I decided I should rip it instead of cut it. So I get a more organic look. And I'm going to start with what I'm most familiar with, which is a paper. So I'm going to put 2 pieces down there. And I also decide I want some mamagami paper. This is some peach mamagami paper I made with markers and water. And then just folded it up. But it's not quite mamagami enough. So I'm doing a little bit more. Like I said, that peach is a color of comfort. So I want to include that in there. So I'm going to add that piece as well. And then I'm going to start trying to arrange the material. I still really don't know what I want to do with it or how I want to put it on. So I'm just going to play around with it at this point. That's more mamagami collage paper I made. In fact, there's a video showing you, one of my first videos, the Jumchi, mamagami Jumchi video. Shows you how I did that. I'm just trying to get a feel for what I'll like, how I want these pieces to go on together. They seem like overwhelming. Like, how do I get these pieces to, like, go together and look decent? They don't kind of blend in the same way paper blends in. So, I'm a little, I don't know. I just don't know what to do. I'm like, well, let's just play around with this. And see, I'm a little disappointed because honestly, I'm thinking this is not as pretty as my other journal. Why is this one so hard for me? But, you know, you just have to keep going. You can't give up. And I'm just starting, so it's a little too soon for me to even judge. But for now, it seems a little strange. These pieces just don't seem to work that well together. But I really want to include all of them because I love the materials and I just love the idea of the patchwork there. So I decide, okay, what it needs is to be frayed because one of the materials had a frayed edge and I loved it. So I decided that that's what I'm going to do for the rest of them. I'm going to fray those edges. So it is quite time consuming to fray all the edges. And I thought I increased the speed to 600 for this part. I thought. But it's worth it. It gives a really nice look to fray those edges. You just have to kind of pull a string. You just have to pull the string loose. And if you can't find a loose string, you can just sort of cut a little tiny little sliver into it and then pull. So that's what I'm doing here. This is a part that I sped up to 600. The last part was 300 speed. Because I thought it would be a little too tedious for you guys to watch this. This is so time consuming to do this. It's so worth it because I do like the way that it looks. So, yeah, I'm glad I sped it up to 600. So now I'm going to start to glue these pieces down. I had a general plan, you know, where things were arranged or how. That's a piece of paper there, one of my I think it was jelly print. Okay, that's the fabric. And then the red fabric I like. And that is the Mamagami collage paper. And then that is the flower side of that striped material. And it's the green corduroy material. Now I'm going to do... back to go get something. Not sure what happened. Okay, there goes this yellow stripes. And now here goes some beige material. And then the sort of grayish beige one. And then that red one. I really like that red one, so I want it on top. And it's almost a little too frayed, but it doesn't bother me because this is all about overcoming trauma. And there's tattered edges, and frays and disarray, and trauma is just, it's messy. And so to have sort of a tattered look is very appropriate, I think. And so the journal is really about like the process of healing the trauma. So there's the fractures and the pieces, but then they all come together. So that's really the idea, the theme with it. So now I'm going to add a few more collage pieces because I do want to be able to see it. And I'm starting to feel a little bit better about this now. And so there's more jelly prints. I want to include this sheer fabric, but I decided it's definitely not going to look good, just cover the whole thing up. So I can fray it and I just cover a section. And I also want one of the more ivory colored sheer fabric. So I'll put that there. And I consider this other piece of paper, but I decide against it. Nope, or I guess maybe I had a tiny piece of the peach from it. And now I have to figure out how to do the furry pink. I decided it should be really small chunks because it was kind of very dominant, if I didn't make it into small chunks. So I like that because it does match the paper color. So now I really do want to use this lace or that lace. Right now I'm just kind of playing around, figuring out what I want. I decide that, well, I play around with this one, but I ultimately decide on that pink lace there. Alright, I went to go get some jewelry junk jewelry, I should say, to see if it might make a good embellishment, like over that piece of lacy ribbon. So I'm playing around with it. And that was definitely too big, so I try to make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just trying, because I'm not that happy. I think it needs something more. So this is an old necklace that's pretty much corroded. It used to be gold, now it's like a greenish color. It's kind of a nice greenish color for the journal, not for wearing around my neck. Okay, so I decided I love that lace, and I want to include that. But I just want to tuck it under so that only that edge pops out. And now I'm gluing that pink ribbon because I decided I want that. So the main difference between the fabric fuse and the fabric tack is that the fabric fuse just takes longer to dry, but it'll still work. But it is frustrating sometimes that you have to wait for it. Especially for something like that. It will hold that metal there once it dries. Okay, so now I'm gluing the metal piece of jewelry. Fake metal, I should say. Or cheap metal, I don't know what it was actually made of. So I really like this Might have been a button or something. It has this little attachment. Or it could have been an earring. I'm trying to figure out where I want to put it. So this is another hard part. It's like, where do I want to put things? Things just don't feel right yet. It's just not satisfied yet. I need something more. It's just not standing out enough. So this is where I'm, trying to figure it out. Where do I want this? Do I want it there? There? Or I just switch it around, put that piece there. Ultimately, I decided I want to put that piece there. The question is, do I want that there? Could that be, I'm thinking, well, that could be my button that holds everything. I shouldn't put the glue there. So I wipe off the glue, thinking that might be the button, for my attachment, my ribbon or sari silk that I'll use to hold everything together. But later I remembered that I did buy a heart-shaped button for that. So now I'm just going to glue some more materials, some more of that red piece, because I just like it and I thought it needs a little bit more. And I don't have that middle piece attached, nor that button attached. So I decided I want some of the ribbons and yarns, the real fluffy ones. So I just love that type of material for some reason. So I did glue that down, and I'm trying to pull it up to the camera. Alright, so I'm back again, and for this part I have it down to 300 again. So the cover's almost done, but I do want to include some of these embellishments that I cut, that embroidery that I cut out from that fabric. So I cut out the flower, fussy cut it, and I cut out another little round piece, and I want to put it on there. And I remembered my button that I got from Walmart that I want to use to attach my ribbon or sari silk. Okay, so this is a lace I want to include, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to do it because I just want that edge poking out. I decided it could be a pocket. It would make a great pocket. So I've also cut out a piece for the back side, but right now I'm still working on the front. So what I'm going to do is sew that button onto my cardboard, and then I'm going to cover it up. Alright, so you need the leather sewing kit in order to sew the button. I start off thinking that the dark brown, reddish brown, is going to be a good color. It matches my journal and matches the button, but being lazy, and it's already got a piece of white string there, so I decided to go with the white string. Now, I'm trying to decide on the direction of my button. And so there's a hole in my string. Basically, I just have it doubled. So this is the part that I probably would do a different way. Okay, I pushed it in there, so that time it went okay. This is kind of a hard part, poking it through. There is a poker, like a sharp metal object that comes with my leather sewing kit. So you could see how much I'm struggling here to push that needle through. Had I done it over, I would start with that poking stick and I would poke 4 holes equal to the button, however many holes your button has, and poke those holes in there first and then try to go back and forth in that same hole for sewing. That would be so much easier than what I did because I'm struggling big time. You can see to get that hole punched. Also should have lifted up my cover there. Okay. So I'll get it. It's just I'm doing it the hard way, and I did smash my needle in half. Oh yeah, you can see it there. I'm trying to bend it back. So, note to self, note to you. use that sharp thing first. See, that's what I'm talking about. Do that. I just waited a little too long before I thought of it. Get your holes in there first and see how much easier it is. Okay, there we go. So, I mean, this part is a little tedious, but it's kind of worth it because that button's going to stay on there much better than if you glued it, and then you're going to then use it to wrap, either a ribbon or sari silk to hold the journal closed, and you're going to be able to open and close it and wrap it up against that button, and then tie, a bow to close it. Or you don't even have to tie a bow if you don't want to. You just wrap it around the button. There's other enclosures too. I think it would be too long to go over any of them, not to mention the fact that I haven't really learned any other closures. This is my second journal. The other grief journal that I posted was my very first one. So, but I do like the look of the button and the wrap around it. So now I'm just tying my knots. And, of course, when you do all this, it leaves those little bumps and those little knots. So I like to plan to have that part covered. If you forgot to cover that, and you already had it covered, and now you have a bunch of string and knots sticking out, you can always go back and cover it with another piece of material or another piece of washi, like a thick piece of washi. But I remembered to do that first before gluing my material down, so now my material is going to cover it up. And so also I'm trying to get my lacy pocket there with some of the lace sticking out. So I'm going to add this stripe material, and I had actually wanted to do the flower side, and I totally forgot. So I'm putting the striped side on there, and notice I accidentally had cut my material on the edge there, but it really doesn't matter because it's all being glued down, and then that lacy pocket's going to cover it up anyway. So this is where the fabric tack would have come in handy, because getting that lace glued on was really hard. So when it dries, it works well for when it dries. It just takes a long time to dry. I'm going to wipe it off, because otherwise you might not be able to get the glue out again. It does sort of get on your fingers. I tend to be a messy artist anyway. So, but periodically you gotta wipe your fingers off. The materials and stuff starts sticking to your fingers. And so now I'm going to do my back cover while that dries. Okay. And I'm going to attach my two bases together. Alright, because I like my covers a little bit thicker. Alright. So I noticed I didn't quite have my things lined up very well. Okay, so now I'm trying to figure out. This is the important part here, actually. You need to make sure that everything is going to be in the correct spot. That you don't make your back cover and then you decorate it with everything facing the wrong direction. So you do need to kind of make sure you know where things go, and then you have your journal lined up properly. And notice my lace is falling off. So I keep trying to figure it out over and over, because then I forget, which way did it go? So now I'm trying to hold it back again. and more glue is needed. Alright, so again, more glue is needed. Hold everything together. Okay, I'm trying to figure it out again. So I'm going to glue that down. More glue is needed. Alright, I put all the glue down there. Then I like to just brush it out just to make it a little bit more even. Both sides of this material were pretty. It wasn't hard to figure out which side I wanted. So again, I'm trying to figure out how to wrap this up like a present. And for the life of me, like fabric doesn't work the same way as paper. And so I couldn't figure it out. But I just do the best I can. So I decided to glue the edges there together. And then I try to do that fancy fold like when you're wrapping a present. And I'm struggling a bit. I just can't remember. And I was like, what's the best way to do it? I'm trying to tuck it in. It doesn't work like paper. And I just kind of fiddle around with it and get it good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. So it's just a matter of getting it all glued down. There's probably so many ways you could go about doing this. I thought about showing you other ways, like with paint. If you decided to use paint instead of material, you might want to gesso it first. I also thought about showing you how you might use plaster of Paris or, modeling paste to get like a little bit of texture on there. But honestly, this is like, it was a 3-hour process or longer. And so this video is going to be long enough. So, there are other ways to decorate, but I chose to use materials and sort of a collage approach. So that's pretty. So I felt where the holes were, and now I'm just going to punch it again. Which already you can see I'm barely getting that thing through my hole punch. Okay, so now I'm going to cover it up, and I remember I want the flower side. And even though I could have maybe had more cohesion if I would have put the striped side. Notice I don't even have the stripes in the right direction anyway. But I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to match exactly. I want those flowers. So I made sure to put them so I could see them. I also wanted to make sure I had the flowers facing the right direction because I like looking at the flowers that way. Okay, so now it's the next day and everything has dried. I want to show you it in my pocket. It's all glued and all my materials are glued together. I want to add my rings and my grommets and a few more embellishments. I don't like the white string after all. I want to cover it with a smaller button, and I also want to add those embroidery pieces which I got from that material. Cut off the leaves of it, but I think it looks too starch white, so I want to color it. And I'm using Distress Oxide inks from Ranger. I'm using Saltwater Taffy, which is a peachy color, and I'm using Wild Honey, which is a yellow color. I thought that would be the easiest way to go about doing it, but I also considered alcohol inks or acrylic inks and maybe diluting it with water and then just dipping them in there. But I thought this would be a lot easier, and I think I was right. So I like the peachy color because I think that it matches the other peach colors. And again, that's Saltwater Taffy from Ranger. But I also thought it needed a bit of yellow, which is the Wild Honey, just to make it match better. And I like the way it matches that yellow in my cover. And the peach that's right there in my cover. So I think I put the yellow on a little bit too strong, so I want to soften it up by adding more pink to it. And so I know when you spray distress oxides, they sometimes can do cool things on paper and leave these little spots. So I tried to spray the material. It doesn't leave little spots, but what it did is lighten everything, which I think I had a little bit too dark, so that's good. So I'm just going to let it dry now for a moment. And I want to show you how to put the grommets on. So first of all, though, I have to figure out what color I want. It comes in various colors, silver and gold being the most common. So I'm trying the different colors out. Gold is traditionally my favorite, but I thought the silver might match some of my embellishments, like that button at the top there that looks like a little flower, looks kind of silver colored. So I'm thinking that silver actually might match better, although both would have been fine. So just laying them in there, comparing them both to each other, and then I decided on the silver. So now I just want to make a point about the glues, how fabric fuse works fine, but it takes forever to dry, but fabric tack dries quickly. I do have a little bit in there, so I'm going to use it just to glue the smaller button on top of the larger brown heart button. And I'm going to show you that it glued instantly. See, look at that. Doesn't fall off. So, if you're impatient and you like things to dry quickly, then the fabric tack is the way to go. However, the advantage of the fabric fuse and the ones that glue a little bit slower is that you could change your mind. So now I'm going to show you how to attach these grommets. So first of all, you want to push them into the hole. And basically that just provides reinforcement, but also decorates it and just makes it look more professional, in my opinion. Sometimes it's hard to push it through the hole. So just kind of push it all the way through. When you do, you're going to have metal prongs sticking up at that side there. And so that device there, the grommet plier, is going to push that down. So there's two ends. There's an end that is protruding and an end that's indented. The end that is protruding is going to be the one that pushes down on the metal pieces that are sticking up. And the indented piece is going to fit sort of underneath. You're going to kind of slide it into till it kind of sits in there. You'll feel it kind of slide into the groove. And then you'll use two hands to squeeze it down. So I'm going to do it again here. I'm going to put the silver one in there. And I'm going to get them both in first. Okay, so you want the metal protruding pieces sticking up, and you want that protruding end on the plier to push down on those metal pieces that are sticking up. Okay, so now I'm going to attach the rings. You just kind of push it forward and then like that. Push it forward and then clip it in there. Push it forward and then out. Alright, so now I'm showing you why you want the larger size because of how big my other journal was. So now I want to attach those flowers, and I have to figure out how best they're going to go. So I'm just trying to get the rings out of the way. At first I consider just gluing them straight down. with my fabric fuse because I don't want to have to clean my brush off again. But I decided I like it better on top of the ribbon, the pink ribbon. I contemplated that other ribbon, but I just didn't like it. Alright, so I'm gluing it down and sort of assessing things like, do I like it? What does it need? And I just think it's lacking something. Like it needs just a little bit more something in the center of it, I think. But now I just want to look at my attachments and, my enclosures. How am I going to close this? So I'm comparing these different enclosures. One is a pink, thicker ribbon, and then we've got the blue, thin ribbon, and then we've got the off-white Sari silk there. And I'm trying to figure out the best one. So in order to do that, I just have to kind of try to see what they look like. So you just tuck it into the button like that, and that's why you want it's sewed on there versus glued on there. And then you can just wrap it around just like that, and then sort of wrap it around the button, and then pull it back, and then you can just leave it hanging or tie it in a bow. So I like the Sari silk because it does tuck under the button, and it makes a nice little bow, and I like the color of it. It is what I used on my last journal too. I need to trim it down just a little bit. Okay, so that's what the Sari silk looks like. And the button's starting to fall off. Not the button, my flower starting to fall off. Okay, so now I just want to look to see what the pink one looks like. So I'm going to put the pink one on there. And I'm going to wrap it around the button. And then wrap it around my journal. And then wrap it around the button again. And then bring it over. And just, I suppose I didn't have to bring it over, but I'm used to doing that. And I want it to tuck under the button, but it doesn't. It's too thick. And so for that reason, I don't like it, even though it matches really well. But I thought that's just going to get on my nerves. So I'm going to try this thin blue ribbon. Again, I'm going to just wrap it around there. Pull it through. Wrap it around my journal. Then wrap it around my button. And then tie it in a bow. Now it's a little bit too long, so I'm going to trim it down some. I'm looking at it. I do really like the light blue, so that's a strong contender right there. So I'm studying it and trying to figure out what I want. And I also had this ribbon, which originally I was going to use for my cover, but I forgot about it till it was too late. But I think I'm going to use that other ribbon somewhere on the inside of my journal. So I think what it needs is some more fluffy ribbon. Or yarn, rather. I guess it's yarn. So I'm going to take this off. Or at least that's the plan. Only problem is I can't take it off because somehow it got knotted in there, so I had to cut it off. So bye-bye, that's not my choice anymore. Because I'm sure it would always get tangled up in there and knotted up, and I need something easier. So I decide that I want to glue the pink ribbon, the pink yarn down. So, and add it. Now I'm just deciding what else this needs to make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm experimenting with buttons and different jewelry pieces. That's another button. I thought the the red button wasn't too bad, but it just was odd there. So I don't know why I'm looking at buttons. It looks kind of weird, to be honest with you. But I was like, it needs something, and I just didn't know what it needed at this point. So I'm just going the button route, looking at different buttons. I decide what it needs is a butterfly. So I get out my journal there with all my embellishments that I actually made myself. That I actually made that one with the Plaster of Paris. I decide butterflies is exactly what it needs. And also a key that's going to hang, because that's going to be the key, like the key of David that God gives me, the key to victory. And it's going to remind me that I hold the keys, that I don't have to be a victim anymore, that I have victory. So I do want the key on the front cover there. And more of that pink yarn. So I'm putting that down there. And also, I did really like that blue ribbon, so I'm going to glue that down there as well. So you can kind of look at the texture from using the Plaster of Paris through some stencils for my holder with my butterflies and ephemera. I put the Plaster of Paris, mixed it with water and a little bit of acrylic medium to just make it stretch out a little bit more. So now I'm trying to decide what else it needs. And those ladies, they were cute, but they just didn't look very good there. So I'm thinking maybe a flower. Then I'm thinking, no, you know what it needs is another butterfly. And at first I thought it'd be too many, look kind of weird. And the yellow one definitely doesn't work, I don't think. But I'm just going to keep trying to see if there's a butterfly that works. And I'm thinking, nah. Purple's not too bad, but I just don't like the side view of it. That one's okay. And then we've got this greenish one. Not too bad, but don't really like it too much. And then I find this one. I was like, yes, that's it. That's it. That one looks good. And I guess it pulls out the little bit of purple in the bottom right-hand corner there. So I do want that butterfly. I'm going to glue that down now. I'm showing you how it looks. It looks, oh, I think that did the trick. I'm pleased with it now. All right, this is what it looks like outside in the sunlight. It's just really beautiful. I love all the fuzzy textures of that. I love the butterflies, and I am really pleased with this. So I just wanted to show you up close, and then we're going to pan out. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe. And have a blessed day, everybody. Bye.